Welcome to Dark Oddities, where we talk about everything scary, creepy, and weird historically and now. Today, we are going to talk about a true crime documentary that had the biggest effect on me. I'm not a crier, I'm not overly emotional, but this documentary had me in tears, and we're going to talk about it today. This documentary was about the West Memphis Three, and if you've never heard of the West Memphis Three, it is a heck of a story, and I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. I could go into detail about this for probably an hour, but I just don't have the time for that, so let's get into it. Now, there were three boys, Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers. All three were 8 years old. They were out playing, and they disappeared. Nobody could find them, and they were reported missing. And the police started looking for them. I think it was just a very limited search that day, but then the next day they went out and did a more in-depth search. There was also family and friends that were doing their own search. And eventually there was a shoe found in, it was like a little watered area. I'm not sure how to describe that, but that's where the shoe was found. And eventually all three boys were found. They did not have clothes on, and they were all hogtied with their shoelaces. I'm not going to get into detail about what happened to them. I'm sure you guys can kind of gauge where I'm going with this. I don't want this video to be restricted or taken down, so I'm not going to get into the details. But if you guys want to learn more about it, you can always look up the documentary or watch the documentary. So they found the boys, and so they started to look for suspects. And the three suspects that they came up with were Jesse Kelly, who was 17. He, in fact, had a low IQ, and I think that made it easier for them to manipulate him into agreeing to whatever the police wanted him to agree with. There was also Jason Baldwin. He was 16 in high school, was an intelligent kid, and loved to draw and do things like that. His teacher had tried to talk him into going to college to be a graphic arts designer. And Damian Eccles, he was the only adult of the three. He was 18, and it was well known that he had a lot of mental health problems and things like that. I think all three were kind of just those kids that kind of stood out as like the goth kids, kind of is what I would say. They were kind of known as just like the weird kids. But I think that a lot of that with teenagers is just a phase that they go through. It's just to be different. Maybe they're not popular, but they want to be different and they want to stand out, and that's how they express themselves. And that's kind of what I think that they were doing. But it was kind of misjudged to be like a cult-like thing, if you see where I'm going with that. But anyway, they were tried and convicted with little to no evidence besides this cult panic that was going around at the time. And they were all three convicted to 20 plus years, or the ultimate, punishment that there is. So they were convicted of that. Now in 2007, they came out with new DNA evidence that showed that the DNA that was found was neither the victims nor the suspects. So that put a big, twist into the case. And therefore 2011 rolled around, and they were eventually able to basically come to the decision that they were all three going to plead an Alford plea, which, if you don't know what an Alford plea is, it's basically they're going to let them out with the recognition that the state had enough evidence to convict them, even though they had already been convicted and served 18 years. And they also had to agree that they would not file a lawsuit against the city. So I know that they really did not like to do that. Especially Jason Baldwin. He did not want to admit to something that he didn't do, but he realized he was going to spend the rest of his life in prison if he did not agree to it. So he ultimately did, and so did the other two. Now they're out, and nobody else has ever been a suspect or identified in this case. So it's kind of like a cold case. We don't really know who did it. If you watch the documentary of the West Memphis Three, there's like a couple different ones you guys can look up and watch. If you watch the documentary, you will see who they kind of lean towards, who they think did this. And, I think that it was a family member. I'm not going to specify which one because I don't want to get in trouble here, but that is the story of the West Memphis Three. If you guys want to know particulars about certain aspects of the case, you can always put a comment down. I'm more than happy to go delve into this more because it's a very fascinating case to me. So you guys let me know what you think. If you've seen it, let me know what you thought of it. Let me know in the comments. Love you guys. Bye.